Hello there. I said the establishment would never give up, and they haven't. The Brexit backing parties need to unite. Forget the greatest exercise in the democratic process ever undertaken by the UK, because we're about to be wheeled straight back into the EU again, with Keir Starmer at the head. France and Germany are pushing for a new membership hierarchy of 4 tiers in order to integrate countries that are not willing and are not able to join the EU in the foreseeable future. And it seems that under Keir Starmer's Labour Party, the UK would be signed up to Tier 3, something called associate membership. It's becoming clear that Keir the Kneeler Starmer doesn't actually want to run the country. He wants to outsource that task. Now, this associate membership would require the UK to pay into the Brussels pot and be governed from Brussels and be accountable to the European Court of Justice. This would buy us something called participation in the EU single market. How much participation, though? And according to the blurb, associate members would not be bound to ever closer union and further integration, nor would they participate in deeper political integration in other policy areas such as justice and home affairs or EU citizenship. Notice foreign affairs is not mentioned, which is important. More on that in a moment. But we would have no national representation within the EU executive and parliamentary processes, no MEPs or commissioners. But we will have to make the commitment to comply with the EU's common principles and values, including democracy and rule of law. Ruled by facts and in reality having to ask permission to do just about anything. And no way of leaving the ECHR, for example. And what's the betting that our participation will include giving the EU full access once again to our fishing grounds, but not allowing the city financial services to operate inside the EU or only allowing limited access? So as far as I'm concerned, anyone signing up to that sort of deal would be cutting the nation's throat. This would be signing the UK state into history. And this comes just as we hear that a think tank, the UK in a Changing Europe, has come out with a report saying that when the Brexit deal comes up for review in 2025, we will probably be limited in scope with what we could get changed. The most we could hope for is a few technical changes, nothing of any consequence. And the EU would love us to be associate members, especially Germany. Full unfettered access to the UK markets with no pesky trade and cooperation agreement rules to get in the way. Not that we ever imposed any of those rules on the EU, despite them clamping down on us from day one. Remember those truck drivers having their sandwiches confiscated and trucks turned back because the form was filled in with the wrong coloured ink? Anyway, the next move after that would be to get us back fully into the fold once more. But that would take some time to make sure we could never get out again. And this time it would mean ditching the pound for the euro, opening our borders to the Schengen zone, and there would be no rebates, just a huge annual membership fee. And over time our military and intelligence services would be drawn under the command of Brussels. And the Ramonas would gloat as they got their putrid coloured passports back. This is what happens when the establishment blob refuses point blank to do as they were instructed by the electorate in the 2016 referendum. They purposely made a botched job of the whole Brexit process, then put all the blame for the pandemic and Ukraine war economic fallouts into the lap of Brexit. This could well pull Nigel Farage out of semi-retirement. In fact, it might see the Tories get a bit of a boost as well, as people start to wake up to the huge danger that a future Labour government represents. And Farage is already wound up today after reading the Financial Conduct Authority report that said they'd investigated the debanking scandal, but they found there was no evidence of right-of-centre politicians being targeted, despite not having looked at Farage's case. The one case that kicked the whole thing off. Liam Halligan, the economics and business editor for GB News, angrily said that he was baffled by this and called it an establishment fudge. They're playing politics to save the bankers' faces, he said. And an even angrier Farage dismissed the report that somehow dismisses any claim that political bias plays any part in debanking. If you ask a group of biased people to examine bias, don't be surprised if they don't find anything. The people running the FCA are not fit for purpose, Farage said on X. And with Keir Starmer looking to somehow shoehorn one of the world's largest economies with its own independent nuclear deterrent into the position of a colony will not help Farage's blood pressure. And this associate membership is just part of a conditioning process to get new full member status. And I doubt that this single market participation will allow us to negotiate our own trade deals around the world. And I would expect it to also include clauses that shackle our foreign and defence policies to ensure the UK does not tread on the toes of the EU's global ambitions. That's what would happen if we joined the EU's Military Permanent Structured Cooperation, PESCO. Now, the Ramona rejoiners will push this as a good move, because they care not one jot for the UK. They just want it squashed out of existence as a proud and independent country. But as the people of the UK wake up to the facts of what this will do to the UK, they will definitely balk at it. Especially when they realise that this is a one-way ratchet back into the EU membership. But the bloc has changed. It's now looking at reduced vetoes, more power away from member states with regard to things like central banking, treasuries, foreign and defence policies. Now, if this does end up being full Labour policy, then Labour could end up with more Scottish seats at the next general election. And that might be part of the plan. Because if this is in his manifesto and he wins by a clear majority, he could take us into associate membership without a referendum, just like Ted Heath did all those years ago. And remember that back then the common market that we joined in 1973 was probably more like this new Tier 3 associate membership thing. Now, a lot of people are saying, let's wait until we see the full proposal before making a decision. But that is pure Ramona talk. This needs nipping in the bud before we end up with more division. The division caused by people refusing to accept democracy was bad enough, but selling our country into colonial servitude would be met with even more division. Now, the EU would love us to become associate members. They always called us Treasure Island. And this single market thing will probably tie us back down into onerous subsidy rules. All our infrastructure and energy plans would have to be approved by Brussels first to make sure the government wasn't overstepping the mark, that we were on that level playing field that was always tilted in the favour of Germany. And right now Keir Starmer is in France, having had a friendly chinwag with President Macron, no doubt discussing this very topic. And he's called it a very constructive and positive meeting. Now, Labour is calling this a sort of relaxed meeting so they can get to know each other better, with Starmer saying afterwards, "It was my first opportunity to say how much I value the relationship between our two countries, particularly when it comes to prosperity and security, and how, if we are privileged enough to be elected into power, intend to build on that relationship and make it even stronger than it is today." Yes, and we can now see the route that is likely to take. He'll be starting by giving up.